right here. You never know, you might sit in the special seat and you might get, a coffee mug or something. So pick wisely. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming to 1 Million Cups. Show of hands, who here is a first-timer? Good. We still got quite a few people coming. This is great. So for those that don't know, the format is simple: 6-minute presentation followed by about 15 minutes of Q&A. When it comes to the Q&A portion, raise your hand, and myself or Ted right here will be able to come to you with a question. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, and it's Riesel with Own the Bank. So let's give Riesel a round of applause.
On? Awesome.
Before we start his time, everyone in the back who's standing, there's plenty of seats up here. Like, come on, sit down. We got seats just for you. Mark, show them how to do it. Have you guys never sat down before? That's okay. I mean, it's just a thing. Like, it's not hard. Anyway, sorry to step on your toes.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you, everybody, for the chance to speak today. I admit I am a little nervous. This is probably the largest crowd I've spoke to. But to get started, I figured I'd go into a little bit about my background or whatever else. I started my entrepreneur venture in 2000. I took my last pizza delivery job check, and I bought a Yellow Page ad for an appliance repair shop. And it was called Caesar's Appliance down on East Harry. Me and a friend started it, and we went all the way until 9/11, when after about 2 months of everybody watching the TV and nobody getting anything fixed, we had to close up shop. But I then entered the workforce until about 2009 as an electrician and some other things. And from that, I realized that's not where I wanted to be. So I started watching some videos online about real estate and some other things, thinking I wanted to get back into being an entrepreneur. And I come across one of those gurus or whatever that was saying that here's my CPA, this is something he's doing. And he talked about a concept called infinite banking. It's a concept that's just sweeping the country by storm since 2000, since the original book was written about it. And I found out I had some credentials and stuff that allowed me to already work in that field. So I sought out a mentor, the #1 performer in the country, one of the top producers and stuff, and then he took me in as a mentor and stuff, and then I've been doing it now since 2010. So the slides I got today are just a small clippet of what my class is that I do, either one-on-one or I do it in small class settings. And so this will just be like an overview of kind of what is it. We all know that we finance things or we do things. People are taught when you buy a car, you have one of two choices. You're either going to borrow or you're going to pay cash. We say there's a third option. There's private banking. Okay? If all your cars were average around $20,000, now they're getting to be $30,000. I have to change my calculator here. But if somebody in their working life was to buy a car every 5 years or so, they would be buying about 11 cars. If they borrowed every single one of them, they'd be spending about $250,000. If they paid cash, they save $30,000. But the private banker person actually makes a profit of $319,000. This is what a borrower does. This is what a saver does. Both of them are on a race to zero. They're just spending their money to buy cars. They're not thinking about building wealth while what they're doing spending-wise. But the private banker and stuff, we twist the two together. They become both the saver and the lender, and they end up paying themselves back and whatnot else, and they end up building wealth at the same time. I like to use this analogy because this is my favorite picture analogy. If I was like your personal banker, your private banker or whatever else, and you had saved up your $20,000 for your car, and you come to me and said, get me a cashier's check or whatever else, I'm ready to go buy that vehicle. And I said, come down and talk to me, we got this great new program at the bank, whatever else. I can renew your savings for 4%. Would it make sense? And I said, I'd give you a loan for 6% so you can still go buy your vehicle. How many of you think that would make sense to do that? Most people don't, but that's okay because the banker doesn't want you to do it either. If you was to borrow the $20,000 over 5 years, you'd have a car payment of $387. You'd pay about $3,200 in interest by the time the loan's done. But what do you think would happen is if you left that $20,000 earning that 4%, it actually makes $4,420 of interest. making you a net profit on one transaction of $1,200. Now everybody says, well, it's only $1,200, but that's one vehicle purchase. Imagine if everything you did in business, everything you purchased, everything you restocked, or whatever else, how that can compound. The main topic I like to teach people is that we're always paying interest. We're either paying it or we're giving it up because it's interest we did not earn on the money that was a deal. But what if we could use our own money at the same time not giving up the interest it's earning? We use the same financial instruments that banks use to store their capital. Now, we're not talking about your savings account. I'm talking about the bank's owners' personal profits and stuff. It's actually called bank-owned life insurance contracts, and they're actually recommended by the FDIC to all new bank startups. And we're talking about when they're going to start a new bank, the capital that they use to start that bank. Permanent life insurance is a safe way to hold and use capital. Bank of America in 2008 had $17.9 billion in these type of contracts. But what if, the big key point here is, though, is if you could control your own banking system and think like you own the bank and capture the interest that you've been paying to others, and you never get to see that money again, why not recapture that and use it for yourself in your business? The average American spends 34.5% of their take-home paycheck on interest only. This is a slide showing it without the principal. And what we do is we take that, you build a pool of money, and then you become the bank that owns the debt of your credit card. And then you pay off the credit card, and you continue to make your credit card payments to yourself. Then you take and pay off your car or whatever else, and then you continue to pay yourself. Now, these pictures could be turned into inventory, forklifts, company trucks, on and on and on. And then that would turn all that stuff that's negative interest into a positive interest for you and your household or your business. This is the gentleman that came up with the original concept in 1981. He preached on it for all the way until 2000 when he finally wrote a paperback book on it and finally got recognition. He says everybody should be in two businesses, what they do for a living or what they're passionate about, and the banking business. And his story was that he was a forester and he bought a $500,000 land deal, and in the process of doing that,
I got to cut you off.
okay, I knew I was getting close. That's my last slide, but anyway, there you go.
Well, let's give him a round of applause.
This seems like a really great way to earn the interest ourselves instead of giving it to the bank. But I'm not understanding totally. Could you tell us a little more on how do we get to keep that interest?
Okay, that's a good question. The nice thing about these policies is that I'm working with an insurance company that is a mutual, which means we own the company. Those who own the policies own the company. So when we do banking using that as the vehicle to hold your funds, whenever they make a profit, that profit is shared back as dividends and profit sharing back into you at the end of the year. And so that adds extra profit. Plus, they have a guaranteed 4% interest on the money while you're waiting to figure out what you're going to do with it. So like in the example of the car example, when 4% on your holdings is growing, it's far exceeding what you're lending, the cost of buying out your own debt.
I wasn't clear. So private family banking, is that your thing that you do personally, or is this part of a larger, like a franchise of some sort? And also, have you been able to be profitable just in doing this and teaching your classes?
Right. Thank you for your question. Private family banking is also known as private family banking partners. There's 30, 40 of us across the country. We're all working together as a general agent type thing, but we're all independent. So if you notice, I've got own the bank, ownthebank.net and stuff. That's me here locally. So when you're thinking local, working with me, or we're sharing, or if you see me tag you on Facebook or deal or sharing, you'll see Own the Bank did this or Own the Bank did. That's me. Okay. And then Private Family Banking Partners is just the bigger group that I'm part of. And to answer your second question, yes, I've been doing this solo as a sole income since 2012. I started in 2010, and then I quit my day job in 2012.
question is, how much do those insurance policies cost?
We set them up, each individual policies, based on individual businesses. So if I have a small individual family, whatever, they might be starting with trying to put $5,000 savings away a year. If it's a business or whatever else, it might be they're trying to capitalize with $100,000 or something like that.
What's the cost? Just, you got anything that you can give me just kind of a cost on, average cost? How much per thousand? Something like that?
Oh, there is actually no cost because you're putting the premiums in the deal, and they're designed, which is a slide I had to cut out to save time, shows that it all turns into cash value within 4 years. So you're able to use every dollar that you use for deposits and stuff.
Can you explain to me how you make money?
Sure. I'm a licensed insurance agent, so I make the commissions from the insurance company on the marketing budget for generating new business.
What's the percentage of cash value the first year, and then the second year? Is it 60% the first, and then I believe it's 80% the second, and
That's
110
correct.
third? Is that correct?
Right. 60% is usable the first year.
And then can you take out that cash value and start another policy with that cash value? Is that correct?
Yes, I recommend people don't start the second one until about the third year
Sure.
when they're at like 97% cash value, because then they're dollar in, dollar out, and rotating.
Okay, so we're using our own money over and over, and our life insurance policy grows?
That is correct. I look at it because the typical whole life policy that people are used to seeing, they would always say, like, here's how much death benefit you get, here's this expensive premium you're going to have, and oh, by the way, it'll generate in 20 years some cash value. But the banking contracts, these are not aimed at providing death benefit. They're aimed at providing a banking function. And so in the process, they are generating large cash values the first year and within 30 days. And then, oh, by the way, it's got a death benefit bonus.
Riesel, is the underwriting similar to what you would find in other life insurance contracts?
That is correct. The underwriting will be the same.
Like paramedical, things like that?
Right.
Based on, is it difficult to, based on age, to qualify for that?
Yes, I've had only 3 clients because of health get declined, and like massive open heart surgeries or whatever else. But then there's always family members, children, whatever else that you can do it on, because we're not aimed at the death benefit. We're aimed at the cash value. So we don't care who it is on, as long as it's.
This is a great question, which prompted me to think, can these don't have to just be on one person, right? You could actually put these on your kids or your grandkids or key men or something like that at a business?
That's correct. Anybody you have an insurable interest in, which basically means if you have some kind of financial gain or loss, if something was to happen to them, then that's an insurable interest. So if you have business partners and stuff like that, sometimes people would set up key man insurance policies, but they're doing it just for the death benefit. Why not make it a banking function for the business and the key man policy, so that you're not just spending an expense on death benefit, you're actually getting something for it.
I read somewhere like the key man insurance that you could use the cash value like later down the road for a retirement program for that key man, but you still would maintain the ownership of it, but able to have the death benefit later down the road possibly. Is that true?
Yes, it is. And that's the standard lingo you would see with a standard typical whole life policy is down the road you can use it for retirement and stuff, but those are not custom designed as banking policies, which speeds that process up into 30-day period.
So you still recommend that somebody get a personal IRA or things of that sort for their retirement or everything? Is that what you're saying?
No.
You're not advocating that somebody save for retirement?
No, I say for retirement. Maybe I need it. But most people don't realize is that I would actually recommend using private banking as your source of savings for all things long-term. Because it not only, then because everything you do financing, all the cars you've purchased, all that other stuff, remember that big old green slide that ended up being hundreds of thousands of dollars? That's then the long-term. Okay.
Real quick. So you're talking about interest. Why not go ahead if you have an IRA, that money that goes into your IRA, you are getting interest off that. So you're building interest. So why would you not go ahead and have an individual retirement account?
You could have one and do this too. It's not like you have to. I'm just.
You're not
Okay.
really recommended that anybody take an IRA.
Well, I mean, I'm a little biased. I'm working with private family banking, so. But I mean, it's not. People have the choices to do. This is just one avenue of approach.
Can I ask a pointed question?
Sure.
You are biased, you're right. So is it just your bias that would make you have an answer like that, not diversify, just go into private family banking because you have a financial gain from me buying a policy from you?
I'm not following your actual question, so.
You make money when I buy a policy from you to do
Correct.
personal family banking. So if I came to you and said, well, I've got $10,000. Should I put that in $6,000, right? There's my cap. Should I put that $6,000 in an IRA, or should I give it to you? You're going to be incentivized to say, no, you should give it to me, or I should give it to you, so that you can make the financial gain off the transaction, whereas it may be more beneficial for me to put it into an IRA, make the 6% gain, cut my taxes by the 23% on $6,000 for the year, and it puts me ahead of the game I would be for personal banking in the first year, and then I'd keep that. So I'm not asking a question now. No, I'm not trying to lecture. Sorry, I'm just trying to explain my question. Does my question make sense now?
I got you.
Okay.
Well, there's a principle called seed time and harvest. It used to talk about farming or whatever else. The question is, do you, when it comes to taxes and stuff like that, this grows like a Roth account. So it would be comparing like saving in a Roth account, where all your taxes on your income were already covered when you got your paycheck. And then you get to grow it tax-free while you're in the private family banking deal, so that you end up not paying taxes at retirement when you draw out your policies and stuff. And so it actually, if somebody was saying, well, there's an IRA or there's a Roth, there's pre-tax or there's post-tax. Well, this would be another post-tax idea.
On your right.
Well, I've read a little bit on this also, and I think what Reese will answer the question that with the life insurance policy and the cash value being able to utilize it throughout your lifetime, the 401, you still can take some loans off of it if you're employed, but if that becomes unemployment, that has to become an early withdrawal with a 10% penalty. You do have to pay taxes eventually on a 401, and the 401s do not have a guarantee whatsoever. They say right down at the bottom, this could become worthless over time. I've lived through two big down crashes in 2000 and 2008, and both times saw over $200,000 in my diversified mutual funds disappear. Also, has a death benefit where your mutual fund has no death benefit for you.
How much are you paying this guy? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's great.
As a follow-up thought, I do this more one-on-one, and there's actually 41 slides to this deal that goes into a lot more detail and whatever else. And so, due to the fact that I was trying to trim it down to 6 minutes, and being a first speech of over 100 people, I'm being a little nervous, whatever. So,
Well, if there's no other questions, let's ask the last one. What can we as a Wichita community do for you?
I appreciate that question, and I thought about that. Like most of the people that have presented in the last couple months that I've been here, it's like help share me on social media and stuff like that. But at the same time, maybe watch on social media and stuff. I'm going to be talking about maybe doing some general classes where I go into more detail on it or whatever else. Maybe attend a class or something like that. Also, if it's not something for you, that's okay, because it's just one of many ideas. But maybe I might be an avenue for somebody else that you may know.
Let's give him a round of applause. And as always, for presenting with us, you get the one-of-a-kind 1 Million Cups mug. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, we have a few announcements, and as always, you can find them at startupwichita.com/events. And then also, there's a few things that are on your guys' chairs when you guys walked in. We've been harping a lot on Accelerate the Heartland, because on October the 5th, we will not be in this location. We'll actually be at the Marriott off of Webb and Kellogg, which actually isn't on the document, but just write that down. So 1 Million Cups will be off-site on October the 5th. But also, feel free to hang out that day. There is a fee to attend the rest of the day for that, but you get a lot for that. I mean, if you look at the schedule of events, there's a lot of different things that are going on throughout the day. We have some venture capitalists going to be in town for a discussion. Kitten's working on something that a lot of you in this room would probably be want to attend and be a part of, that he'll be presenting at 1 Million Cups to talk about it a little bit more. Yeah, you want to actually talk about it now?
No, but what I do want to say is that if you take an hour out of your week to come to 1 Million Cups, you should definitely take one day out of your year to go to Accelerate the Heartland, because it's the same kind of thing, right? The same principle. But you know what the number one thing I hear from people in Wichita is?
What is that, Ken?
It is, how did I miss out on that? How do you know? How did you find out about that, Ken? It's because I go to things like this, right? If you go to this, you're going to get to see 12 different startup companies in Wichita, like 13 different startup companies in Wichita. You're gonna hear their pitch. You're gonna understand their business model. You're gonna get to hear from the head of the Kauffman Foundation, and me, which, I mean, that's no big deal. You get to hear from me a lot. But it's gonna be an amazing day, and it's not that much cost. I think there's even discounts for YP members. I'm looking at Sam Form. Yeah, YP members, and then if you're an entrepreneur, which, I mean, lie, say you are, or don't. Sorry.
It's on the honor system.
Yeah, honor system. So start a company, buy a gumball machine, and you're good, right? But come to this thing because it's going to be good. Sorry, I just wanted to put a point on that.
Well, and I'll piggyback on that. Invite somebody. Every one of you guys have a colleague, you have a family member, you have a friend, you have somebody who should be in that room. I know a few people are actually going to be showcasing at this, so if you have presented at 1 Million Cups or are an entrepreneur and you'd like to showcase your product, we can do that too as well. I know there's raise a hand who is actually going to be showcasing at the at Accelerate the Heartland. Raise the hands. So we got a couple people. Actually, our presenters who are coming up are going to be showcasing there as well. So please be at the event. AccelerateTheHeartland.com. Find out more information. Yes, sir. For the suspense. Prices range from $59 to $299, depending on where you sit at in the ecosystem. You'll go on the website and you'll see exactly what that means when I say where do you sit at in there. But you get a lot for it. You get lunch over the lunch hour. You get a book by Victor Huang, who wrote the book The Rainforest. You get a lot for that day. This is something that's a very innovative and inspiring day, so I encourage everybody to come out there. And if you come to 1 Million Cups and you say, hey, I want to stay the rest of the day, you can buy your ticket there while you're at the day, so you can make up your mind there when you're there on the spot. Yes, sir.
Hey, Jacob. First of all, full disclosure, our firm's a sponsor. But so here's 2 reasons why you would go. All right? Number one is if there's individuals in here that are interested in investing, then the question that's going to get answered, because this panel is strong. And full disclosure, because I represent some of them, but the point is you're going to see what they look at to invest, which will educate you as an investor. The other thing for those of you that are entrepreneurs is as you're structuring your business and your business model, and someday you hope to raise capital, they're going to tell you what it is that they look for so that you can be prepared, so that someday when you do your ask question, you've provided the information to them that they care about. So I'd really strongly encourage people to go to that.
And I didn't plug that, so I'm actually going to give him the mug for the day. You get the mug for the day. Well, and if you guys have any questions about Exotic Heartland, you can talk to myself, you can talk to Kenton, you can talk to Aaron right here. We'll answer any questions that you guys may have about that day, but we'll continue to put it out there on social media. You'll probably see some more things in the news that are coming out, but please check that out. As I said, startupwichita.com/events. A couple different things coming up this week. Another thing that's on your chair is Pitch Friday. So the companies that are going to be presenting at Exotic Heartland, they're going to do their final pitch presentation at the EDE Accelerator on Friday. Free drinks and food at that. So, hey, it's not 1 million cups because it's not coffee, it's drinks. So might as well come and check it out. But without further ado, I'm going to bring up our next presenters, or both of you guys. It's going to be Chuck and Elisha, and I always butcher the name of your company sometimes. Vigilias. Vigilias Telemedicine. All right, give me 1 second. We should give them a round of applause because we didn't do that.
Thanks, everybody. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for letting us present to you. We'll let Elijah start. Hi, everybody. I'm Elisha Yagmai. Chuck and I are both physicians, and we'll try to make it through our 6 minutes as quickly as we possibly can. So we are part of the team that represents Vigilias Telehealth. We are a Wichita-based company that is in the midst of building a rural healthcare network, all via telemedicine. This is what our first slide says. So a telemedicine healthcare network to serve rural America. We've obviously started here in Kansas and have slowly started to extend tendrils into other parts of the rural world and hope to continue to do that. Here's just a basic look at sort of the general outline of how things work in rural health. In general, you have your doctors and other healthcare providers clustered in cities, and then you have a lot of people that are sort of spread across rural America with a far, far smaller number of providers and very, very few subspecialists. So some primary care, very, very little specialty care overall. These are kind of the number of people living in rural areas has been estimated to be anywhere from 40 to 66 million people, and there's quite a few healthcare dollars that are spent in that market, quite a few of which are addressable by telemedicine. And more importantly than the dollars addressable, it means that the care that is being delivered could in fact be done by telemedicine. So the problems with rural healthcare at this point are pretty simple. The first problem you have is just one of geography. People live 150 miles, 200 miles from the nearest population center, which means they generally have to travel that distance to get that care. That results in long wait times. It results in people not getting care that they should be getting because I'm not going to drive 200 miles to see somebody for a 10-minute visit, so I'm just not going to go, right? And so what happens effectively in many rural clinics is that the people living in the rural area will ask the primary care provider to pretend to be that specialist and just sort of figure something out and try to manage them in that way. And people do their best, but in some cases you're not able to execute everything you need to do if you don't have that additional training. And a lot of rural primary care providers will certainly tell you that. Beyond that, you also have some variability in the quality of care delivered in rural areas, in as much as many of the rural communities are just desperate to get providers. People that might not be able to get in a job in an urban environment due to just increased options are able to get employment in rural communities. That leads sometimes to substantial variations in quality. If you work in healthcare, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't work in healthcare, there are some places in the state you don't want to get sick. Let's just put it that way. From a cost perspective, also the cost of care has been very high. So what happens in a lot of small towns is, maybe you come into the emergency room there and you've got bad kidney function, right? So what they do right now is they call up a life flight, they call a helicopter or an airplane, and they fly you to the nearest medical center that has a nephrologist there to see you. The reality of that is that what the nephrologist in fact does is talk to you, look at your lab studies, order some more lab studies, and then decide on an intervention in the vast majority of cases. What they don't do is actually touch you in any meaningful way. So what you're really being transferred for is their brain, not their body. Right? But you just got a $15,000 bill to be transferred so that they could look at your charts with you next to them instead of with you seeing them across the screen. So there are a lot of things like that. And then kind of other costs that are sort of hidden in the system, good examples of things that I myself have seen. People that have terrible diabetes. It's horribly out of control. They can't feel their legs below the knees anymore. They don't, they don't go see a diabetic specialist because it costs them their entire month's paycheck to go to the city, wait all that time, try to travel back. So they just don't go. And so what ends up happening is when they finally show up at their small rural hospital needing an amputation because they have a horrible, fungating wound on their leg, then everybody in here ends up paying for that life flight to move them to the hospital to saw off their leg, when in fact if we'd just done a little bit more effective diabetic management at a distance, we could have prevented them from even having that event happen in the first place. So there's a lot of things like that that just kind of go on in rural health. So our solution to that ultimately was to try to use telemedicine to improve a lot of these things. One was just to make the access instant. So instead of having to travel to a place to get your care, you just go to your nearest healthcare facility and you get access to a provider that has that expertise to try to help you, do a better job with whatever's going on with you. The other element of it also is that many rural providers, the way I describe it is they have traditionally lived on an island. They're out in wherever it is. They're trying to hold down the fort on the frontier of medicine with no help and no backup and nobody to call for another opinion and no other sets of eyes. This is all going on. You don't get that care if you live in a city. When you show up in a healthcare environment here, there are probably 15 sets of eyes on you. There's multiple sets of nurses that have a lot of knowledge. Then there's different physicians that you see. Then there's different specialists that you see. Then you end up really sick. You end up, in the hands of an intensivist. All these kinds of things go on in a city that we all take for granted. In a rural area, there is one stop, and there is only one stop. And if you kind of exceed that person's knowledge, then you're just sort of out of luck. Like that's kind of how it goes at this point. And then the last thing actually was our priority in this was really to try to make it affordable for people. And the idea there was, if we can treat the disease sooner, we can reduce the cost. But also, if we can drop the cost of what it currently takes to deliver telemedicine to people, we can start to make a dent in some of these issues with rural health. So different barriers to telemedicine, and I could talk about this for an hour, but I'll try to keep it to 30 seconds or whatever it is I have at this point. We've run into all kinds of issues with payment for this service, and the back end of medicine from a licensure and credentialing standpoint is just an absolute mess, which is kind of a quiet thing that you discover as you go along. And then there are a lot of regulations. Surprise to people in Kansas, federal regulations don't help things in certain cases. There are a lot of regulations that make it impossible in some cases to do what we want to do. So what we've developed to do that, which we'll hopefully get a chance to show you, is a technology ecosystem. So we've developed a hardware platform that's $56,000 less than what's commonly being used to deliver telemedicine. We have a software platform that facilitates that runs on the latest technology. We've come up with a business model that tries to erase the cost of telemedicine for a lot of these rural communities to get that startup cost out of the way so they can go, and we have continued to chip away at it. So here's a little quick slide on sort of what our software does. How much time do I have left at this point?
Well, I'll just actually ask the first question. How does it work?
Right, how does it work? Right. Fair enough. We actually, the easiest way might be to show you how it works. So if you all will humor us for a second, we can give you kind of a quick demo. And I apologize, we didn't set it up on the larger screen, but we certainly could do that. So let me just log in and show you the basics. Yeah, sure. Okay. So I apologize to everybody. This is a smaller screen, and we're doing it on a tablet here. Yeah, right. So the actual, the kind of platform that we send out has a larger screen, but in fact, our software will work on any size screen you want, so that piece is good. So, what we're trying to kind of show everybody here is that what I have in my hand here is just, this is a Surface Pro, and what Chuck has out there is an iPod, and, so we're running this service kind of off that. This is currently on the cellular, just a cellular MiFi that I have here, and that right there is on the wireless. In fact, the whole system will work on cellular, or actually even down to satellite. So, Chuck, can you hear me? Is everything good? Okay. All right. So the basic gist of it is that if we wanted to do any kind of a talking exam, so you think of all the times you go sit down with your doctor and basically all you're doing is talking about something, right? And then they say, I'm going to order some tests, right? So that's basically all of those visits taken care of. If you can tolerate the fact that you're not in the room with them, voila, you now have your specialist. You can talk to them about whatever you want. It's entirely secure communication. It has good encryption. That's the basic gist. And then, Chuck, you want to just show some of the other elements? You're going to,
sure.
All right.
If anybody's got a weak
So. There we go. You got it. Well targeted. All right, so everybody, you can see the inside of Chuck's ear. Practices good ear hygiene. Hey, Chuck, you want to do a pharyngeal exam real quick? Yeah. All right. We're not doing a colon. You can actually do one with this. All right, there we go. So he's a little off center, but you can see right at the back of his throat. Right. So you kind of have all of that. And then, Chuck, you mind just hooking up the stethoscope real quick? And so these are really tinny speakers. You're going to hear just the top. You're going to hear kind of the top of the spectrum in terms of what kind of sound you hear. So it will sound tinier than normal, but the point is just to try to demonstrate for you all that it can be done. So you can get the heartbeat, right? And then you hook up speakers, you get the kind of deeper sounds that make it better. Thanks, Chuck. So, our intention in this is to try to show you that, with that system, which again it's an iPod and some peripherals and some software, we can do almost a complete physical exam on somebody. Anything that involves a visual exam we can do because we can move this. Anywhere we want it to go. So you'll see you have essentially infinite zoom. You need to look in somebody's eyes, you need to look in their ears or their mouth, or you need to look at a wound on their back, or you need to see their weird rash or whatever. You just move the camera around to whatever part of their body you want, right? And then if you go beyond that, if you need to listen to their heart or lungs, you have full capacity to do that. So the only thing you can't do with the system is examine their abdomen. That's about it, which in most cases you can probably have the person push on their stomach and tell you where it hurts, or you could have another healthcare professional do that with you. To make it work. So that's the basics of how it works. There's a lot more that you can do with that. That's kind of the most fundamental piece of it, and there's a lot more, and we're working on building that right now as we speak.
Question to your left.
I have like 17 questions, but I'll limit it.
Go for it.
So the first, I'm going to limit it to 3. The first question I have is, aren't you limited on your isn't the hardware limitation, like if it really is an iPhone,
yeah.
Then you're only going to pick up as many colors as the iPhone camera can see.
Yeah.
If you want to take I may need to talk to you later. I have a weird ear thing. Like I hear this like low rumble right now. Anyway, sorry, that's a different thing.
Surgery. You need
surgery. Okay, just an ear
just cut it off. Yeah,
okay, that's second opinion. Same thing. So we should take this act on the road. What was I talking about?
Colors.
Right, colors, yeah. Oh, so the stethoscope, that's a hardware thing that you're going to have to send to customers or to the people who actually live. Is that a cost barrier?
So right now, the way, so there's 2 parts of that, actually. So you're correct, right? This stethoscope that we have here, right, runs about $500. So what we do right now is send this to a critical access hospital and say, here you go, use this to examine people that come to you. And we are, in fact, required to do that because Medicare, among other payers. And payers in Kansas, some payers in Kansas just won't pay for the service at all because they don't think it's important for people to get care in rural areas. Other payers will pay for it, but they demand that they go to a physician office or to a hospital, right? So it makes sense in the rural community to say, hey, let's go to the critical access hospital because that's sort of the place that everybody gets health care. And as if you follow the news, many of them are struggling financially anyway. So we can say, hey, look, we can allow you to sort of expand your service offering and offer all these other specialties here that you didn't previously have access to try to boost your own financial bottom line. And in the meantime, you help us by just, deploying this technology locally and having your staff use it. But that's sort of the short term. So the short term is this is $500, and the otoscope piece is $70. We are actively involved. Yeah, thank you, Chuck. We're actively involved in developing a much cheaper stethoscope and otoscope actually to make it so that individuals could actually afford to buy this and use it if they wanted to. We're about I'd say about 80% of the way there on the stethoscope and maybe 40% of the way there on the otoscope at this point.
So then my follow-up to that, that's the industry aspect, like industry adoption. And maybe this is a stereotype on my part, in which case I apologize, but my thought process is that most people in a rural area are going to have a phobia of technology or just a lower adoption at the very least. Is that something you've come across so far that people don't want to take?
No. So there's a couple things, actually. There's actually been studies done by not us that talk specifically because rural areas have a higher percentage of older people, right? So the assumption that everybody makes is that older people, for some reason, they just hate technology and they just won't use it. There have been studies actually done on this, and older people, in fact, that have been studied at least, actually really liked it. The other thing about it, though, is that most people have a certain rationality to them that can overcome their phobias. So if you say, hey, 80-year-old person, you could get on the road in the middle of winter and you could drive 3.5 hours one way to Wichita and deal with the traffic in Wichita, which many people, if you've kind of been in rural Kansas, they find that somewhat intimidating, right? You could go do that for a 10-minute visit with your specialist, or you could just go, half a mile down the road to your hospital and you could see somebody. They're going to be on a screen, but it's the same doctor doing the same stuff. What do you prefer? And we have found that the vast majority of people are perfectly fine with that in exchange for being able to access the care a lot sooner, a lot faster, a lot more conveniently, and in some cases a lot more safely. So it really hasn't been as much of an issue. The other piece of it is that kind of the other sort of vanguard in rural health and the people that are often kind of in charge of things tend to be in their 40s and 50s, maybe their 60s, right? And these are people that actually do have some comfort level with technology. So you can even see kind of the next cohort of people that begin to age in that environment. They use computers and they use devices. So it's not. I think to a degree it is a stereotype that people have. They've made certain assumptions about older people and what they will or won't do. Our experience has been that if you deliver people something that they can really use, many of them will kind of get over the fact that it's done on a screen.
On your right?
Sorry.
Who's actually operating that? Because if you're not there, will it be a nurse at bedside?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be anybody that kind of knows where to put it.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then I have one more question, but anybody who knows how to do it.
That's pretty
But
what it is, yeah.
How are you offering this as a package deal to the hospitals, and then how does that pay into? Are the patients paying that? Because
Yeah. So what we do, right? So the first thing we do, a lot of telemedicine at this point is delivered by going to the small hospital and saying, "Hey, you're desperate, right? So give us every last penny in your pocket, and we'll be available to you." Right? And we looked at it and said, look, they may have 3 patients a month that need this service, right? So that doesn't make a lot of sense for them. And that's one of the reasons, frankly, telemedicine has not spread to a lot of places. So we went in and said, look, forget all of that. We've managed to get our cost profile way down. So here's the stuff, right? Call us when you need us. And when you need us, we will build your patient's insurance policy. If your patient's insurance policy will not pay, which happens in the case of some private payers in Kansas, we have a reduced cash price model, which we publish up front. $50 for primary care, $75 to see a specialist. That's your max out of pocket. That's how much you're going to end up paying for this visit. And that's how we've dealt with it. So essentially, we're kind of passing that cost to the patients, but we're trying to do it in a much more cost-effective way, rather than charging everybody else for access.
To your left. Where are you guys from?
Here, based out of Wichita. Yeah.
Hey, thank you first and foremost for capitalizing something that's needing to be addressed. My question is, telemedicine, as you mentioned, is not exactly new.
Yeah.
Who is your biggest competition, and has that been adopted in the local area, or is that your niche?
No, I would say, so there were some people that were here before we got there. The most common, the one you probably heard about, would be Avera Health. They're out of South Dakota. What they do in Kansas at this point is emergency room backup. So they come in and they charge about $50,000 for you to tear out the wall of your emergency room and put in a hard line so that you can hit a button to talk to a doctor about an emergency from time to time. That's pretty much how it goes. And that development has been funded by a federal grant. Telemedicine, incidentally, has kind of lived and died in Kansas in multiple iterations, many of them funded by federal grants. And then when the federal grant runs out, the question is always, well, what happens now that somebody actually has to pay this bill besides Uncle Sam? And in many cases, that has led to the death of the telemedicine program over time. I can't predict what will happen in the case with them. The other piece of it, though, so they provide, I would say, those kinds of services here in the state of Kansas. They provide more specialties in their own kind of home turf, which would be sort of South Dakota and some of the kind of northern parts of the Midwest. There are some other entities that deliver a subsection of this care. And so what I would describe is that most people coming in, again, come from the model of, I want you to pay me a fee to be available, and then I'm only going to do those services that kind of have a high yield. So I'm going to do telemedicine stroke coverage. I'm going to do maybe telemedicine ICU coverage, and increasing, maybe I'll do mental health as sort of a thing, right? Because I could charge $200-300 a pop for that and make it work. What we're doing is full multi. So we offer 24 specialties at this point. So we're trying to come in and say, we're not here to just do your stroke. We're here to say, what's the kind of care that you would have access to in an urban environment? Let's forget the economics for a second. What kind of care would you have access to? How do we get that care to you, even though you happen to live in St. Francis, Kansas? How do we deliver all of that? And some of it's very high dollar stuff, and some of it is not. Endocrine doesn't pay a lot of money, but there are a lot of people out there that need it. Right? So And there, I can give you kind of the sort of litany of entities that do this. But among those that actually deliver full service, multi-specialty telemedicine, there's I think I can think of really only one or two others that do that, and nobody that does it at our price point. That part is definitely true.
Back row. So how do you handle medical records and kind of continuity?
We have a cloud-based EMR that we use. It is not ours yet.
Use the same one?
They don't, actually. So we communicate back and forth. So we actually do give them access to it if they need to see the record. But we, that's a whole, so you've broached a whole other issue. Healthcare IT and healthcare data communication is very 1985. The fax machine is still probably the most commonly used modality in many, many cases. So we've tried to move to, okay, if we got to do a fax, if we really have to do a fax, we'll do a digital fax, and we'll pull it in that way. But we will kind of e-fax notes back. So we try to close that loop of communication in all cases. We also make our provider contact information available so that if the local provider has a question, they can access that person directly and get the care. But everything we do is kind of based on this medical record that lives in the cloud, and it works in many ways like a traditional medical record would work. It's just spread across 20 some odd places.
In the middle. Will this be available to people who live in urban environments? I would find it really convenient to get a checkup during my lunch break.
Soon it will be. The real issue, frankly, is that insurance won't cover it. So we're trying to work out, what's a good price, what's a fair price to do this for people that are going to pay in cash, because the insurance in many cases will not pay. The thing, though, kind of the flip side of that is, if you can kind of imagine the model, medicine has been very geographic for a long time, right? You have a fixed number of people that you can reach, and so you fight to the death, right, to have access to those people. And then when they come in the door, a certain percentage of them can't pay you, right? So once again, you sort of hang them by their toes and shake every last penny out of their pocket to make up for the next 3 people that can't pay you or won't pay on time, or their insurance is going to fight you, right? But if you suddenly kind of to remove the geographic barrier, all of a sudden you get into more kind of tech-style pricing, where you can say, we can charge a low price for this and still actually be fine, because we're reaching so many more people. So the short answer to your question is, give us a couple months, and you will be able to do this at home.
On your right.
I have 2 questions. How do you keep these communications secure, like HIPAA secure?
So the video is 256-bit encrypted. The EMR is actually not run by us. It's run by a third party that's a national kind of well-respected party. So that's how they're responsible for keeping that secure. To date, they have not been hacked to the best of anybody's knowledge. So hopefully that trend will continue.
One other question: will you go direct to consumer, like concierge type medicine?
We will. Yeah, that's the next thing we intend to offer. It'll be multi-specialty care at home.
To your left.
How are you funded, and is your revenue model the care itself or the platform and the care together?
It is, so up to this point, actually, we funded ourselves. So we bootstrapped all the way through it. The revenue model right now is the care. Increasingly, we are being approached by people that have interest in the platform overall. So we see that kind of growing into something that we will be able to monetize. But right now, the main focus is getting care out to people and being paid for that.
In the middle.
So we are providing care with telematics, but would it be possible in future to actually hire not doctors, but registered nurses who have like 2-year degrees and stuff like that, who can work on the EMR platform and also carry a small drugstore with them and provide prescription drugs right there and then at their homes? I think a lot of people in probably rural or urban areas would like just to pay cash.
Yeah.
And some of that is happening in some bigger cities also.
Yeah.
Is that something on the roadmap?
It is, actually. It is on the roadmap. I mean, so our whole question, I'll humor me for a second. We kind of look at the system of healthcare at this point and we say, this really doesn't work. And we didn't necessarily we started out trying to fix a really small problem. And then as we tried to do it across multiple sites and then multiple states, it was just a nightmare. I mean, it's the best way I can describe it. It was just an absolute nightmare from top to bottom. Everything we turned over was just complications, just insanity. That's the issue. It's just absolute insanity. And so over time, I think we've evolved to our own view of it to say, look, we're not just trying to sort of fight within this system to carve out a niche within it. We think that's an achievable goal, but is that really the thing that we need to do? Or do we need to start to shift to say we need to really begin to work on new models of care? I I mean, when you look into some of these things, right, what you find out is that, wow, this costs so much. Why are patients paying so much for this when it costs 5 cents to make? It doesn't, but you don't, as a healthcare provider, you don't know that it costs 5 cents to make, right? Somebody shows up and gives you a slick marketing pitch and sells it to you for $500, right? When you investigate, you find out this was 5 cents. Where did the other $499 come from? And I understand you got to make your margin and things like that, right? But that cost is being passed on to a patient. You could probably charge $100 and still do pretty well. All of that again has kind of led us back to say, wait a minute, maybe we need to start to work on this sort of coalition between people delivering care and people receiving care, and say, maybe we can kind of reprice a lot of these things to deliver a much more efficient system of healthcare that gets people what they need when they need it for a price they can afford, while still actually serving to sustain itself.
To your right.
We definitely need this in Kansas, so I applaud you. But it seems like the market would be quite global. Have you considered going outside the United States?
Absolutely, yeah, we have. I mean, it's just a matter of how many hands do we have on deck? Not enough to go global, and also just having the dollars to sort of build the infrastructure that you need to be able to do that. But it's absolutely something we've thought of.
The middle. Then you got up front.
So you said you had 24 specialists there. Do you have anyone that deals with the manual therapy side in the musculoskeletal world, or?
So
just
interesting.
If not, just we got you there.
Okay. We'd be happy to work with you. You really would, actually. No. Yeah, we actually did do a physiatry. We did some physiatry visits actually with this. The physiatrist himself was kind of shocked that he was able to glean useful information, but it worked. But yeah, we need some.
Where do all your specialists reside?
Different places. Some are here in Kansas. Others are outside the state. That's another realization. So one of the problems you have in Kansas is that a lot of your specialists, I mean, they're just up to their eyeballs in people. There's just so many people that need to see them, right? So you may have a neurologist in Kansas, but it may take you 6 months or 8 months to even get in to see them, right? However, at the same time, right now in San Francisco, there's a very good neurologist that's sitting in Starbucks because they can't get a job. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, So we say, hey, we know you, and you happen to be good at medicine, and you're underemployed right now. You want to help some people in Kansas? Yeah, that's kind of how it goes.
Middle.
So my question is, what would it take insurances to start covering this, to start covering telemedicine?
What would it take for them?
Yeah.
I mean, I think just a decision on their part that they really actually want to cover it. There's been legislation passed, which some of you may be familiar with, called payer parity, right, which demands that private insurance. So Medicare and Medicaid will pay for it. Some of the Medicaid vendors in Kansas have been a little wonky to work with, but they generally will pay for it. The private insurers have had policies all across the country, all over the map. But some of the states have passed laws that say you must reimburse telemedicine at the same rate that you would reimburse in-person care. What we found, though, is that people then will go say, well, I do pay for telemedicine. What they don't say is, I just won't contract with anybody that actually does telemedicine, therefore I don't have to actually pay for it. And we've encountered that more than once. Or they'll say, hey, we offer telemedicine, but we have these other stipulations on this, which effectively, take it from, hey, we could do this to, well, we could do that, right? And I think in many cases their concern is fraud, for one, right? How do you show that, this doctor suddenly starts sending you 100 bills a week for all these people, he allegedly saw somewhere? How do you disprove that, right? And then also the potential for overutilization in a fee-for-service model, right? What if I say, hey, you know what, I need to see you tomorrow by telemedicine, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that, right? Now that may be legitimate, but it also, right, it could be illegitimate. So I think they look at it and say, this is a shortcut to us sort of burning our whole business model down, right? So we would rather just put the kibosh on the whole thing and sort of see how it develops, rather than jump in, right? So my thought on it, really what needs to happen there is probably a different type of payment structure. Maybe a capitated payment or a block payment or something where it's kind of paid for. Now do as much telemedicine as you want, right? And instead we're going to judge you on the actual outcome of what you achieved as opposed to your description of what you achieved, which is how fee-for-service works at this point.
So our last question, what can we as a community do for you?
Well, one is if you're from rural Kansas, you could call your hospital. tell them that this is available. No, I mean, I think the things that we're looking for at this point is, one, we're looking for partners to help us continue to develop the technology. And that's partners from a tech side and also partners from a capital side to sort of build this out to what it could actually be. The other thing I think would be that, shortly we're going to be rolling this service out, actually, in urban areas, and we're going to try. So if you see it, we'd appreciate it if you take a crack at it and give us your feedback if it's working for you and if it's not, and help us work through how to build and deliver that kind of a care delivery model. So.
Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Here are your one-of-a-kind
1 Million Cups Mugs. I feel like I know you because I know the inside of your ear and your mouth, but I didn't get to hear as much from you. So, yeah, I'm glad you were here. Thank you all for being at 1 Million Cups this week. It's a pleasure to have you on. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks.